They thought no help was coming. Then a human warship came howling from the void. The Sorridan frontier world of Kirill 3 was burning. Governor Lotharis watched the flames dance across the western horizon, where the 4th defense perimeter had fallen. Smoke coiled into the dim twilight sky, thick and black, carrying with it the bitter stench of failure. She clutched the transmitter tight in her shaking hands, its light blinking red. "Emergency beacon still broadcasting," she muttered. "They have to hear us." Her aide, Varric, didn't respond. He was silent, staring out the viewport, eyes hollow with despair. The Sorridans were an old race, stoic, logical, proud. But even they knew the odds. Help wasn't coming. Not from their empire. Not from the Central Worlds. And certainly not from any allies. They were too far out. A forgotten mining world. A stepping stone in the grand interstellar games of empire and economy. And now, the Ravagers had found them. Machines. Half-living, half-coated horrors that tore through civilizations, repurposing flesh and metal into their ever-growing swarm. 100 worlds had already fallen, and Kirill 3 was next. Across the vast cold void of space, far from Kirill 3, a ship stirred. It wasn't part of the Sorridan fleet. It wasn't even flagged under the consortium's registry. It was human. Designation: HSS Revenant. Status: Black Operations Vessel. Autonomous Recon and Intervention. The Revenant had been drifting in dark space, listening, waiting. Its AI mind was old, ancient by human standards, yet tireless, honed by 1,000 covert interventions and retaliations. It heard the distress signal, not through the usual channels, but via the deep space lament frequencies, buried so deep that only the most sensitive of human tech could perceive them. The message wasn't meant for humans, but the Revenant was no ordinary ship. Its core mind stirred. Beneath its carbon-folded hull, reactors screamed to life. Deep in its belly, weapons unshackled themselves from their safeties. Hyperspace engines hummed as coordinates locked. Target: Kirill 3. Directive: Aid. Subroutine initiated: Vengeance. On Kirill 3, the final shield dome began to falter. "We cannot hold the command bunker," Varric said. His voice trembled. "They're coming through the inner wall." Governor Lotharis turned to the remaining officers, 4 out of the original 60. "We make our stand here. If we fall, at least we buy time for the rest to escape through the tunnels." Varric hesitated. There's no one left in the tunnels. A deep silence settled in the chamber. "They came through the rock last night." She closed her eyes. They were truly alone. Far above the planet, space rippled. It didn't explode. It didn't flare with hyperspace bloom like the Sorridan ships. No, the arrival was silent. Deadly. Like a shadow slipping into a room of sleeping prey. HSS Revenant exited the void with its engines howling like a demon scream across the blackness. To the Ravagers, the signature was foreign. Unknown. A curiosity. They scanned it. What they found should have been impossible. A warship with a neural lattice integrated into its hull. A weaponized psyche fused with quantum empathy cores. Emotion as weapon. Hatred as engine. Human. The Ravagers had encountered humans before. Once. A long time ago. A mistake they never repeated. They marked them as black-level threat. They avoided them. They ran. But now one had come to them. And it had brought war. On the surface, Lotharis felt it before she saw it. A sound like thunder echoed across the sky. Not the Ravagers. No, this was deeper, angrier. Then the sky tore. Something fell through the atmosphere like a falling god, encased in flame and shrieking plasma. It impacted the Ravager horde on the western ridge and erased it. Where once stood 1,000 techno-horrors, Now there was only ash and molten ground. Varric gasped. What in the name of the stars was that? Lotharis moved to the viewport, staring up. Through the clouds, she saw it. Dark, angular, terrible. It didn't look like a ship. It looked like a revenant, a ghost of vengeance, cloaked in armor and fury. Then her comms crackled. A voice. Cold, human male. Sorridan command. This is HSS Revenant. We receive your distress call. Stand by. She blinked in disbelief. You're human. But how? Why would you come here? The voice didn't answer her question. Instead, it simply said, because you asked. The Ravagers surged, trying to regroup. They had never lost an entire swarm node before. The Revenant answered them with fury. Orbital cannons roared. Beams of dark matter lanced across the terrain. Dropships fell like daggers, unleashing combat drones with human tactical aggression. Unpredictable, wild, brutal. The humans didn't fight like the Sorridans or the Andari or the rest of the so-called civilized species. They fought like beasts made of fury and memory. Their machines weren't just weapons. They were vengeance personified. Each drone screamed as it descended, a chorus of digital wrath built to terrify even the emotionless Ravagers. The battle turned. Lotharis and her team stepped out of the bunker into a world that had become an inferno of retribution. A human combat frame, a massive 12-meter bipedal mech, strode past her, guns glowing red, sensors scanning, blood-red lights glowing. It stopped and turned toward her. A voice came from within. Get behind us. Then it resumed its march into fire and death. By nightfall, it was over. Where Ravagers had once stood, only wreckage remained. The land was blackened. The air stank of ozone and burning metal. The human ship floated above, silent now. From the Revenant, a single dropship descended. It landed gently outside the former bunker, ramp hissing open. A man stepped out. He wore dark armor, human military grade, but unadorned. No rank, no insignia. His eyes, though, they burned with something ancient, something angry. Lotharis approached cautiously. You saved us, she said. We thought no one would come. He looked around at the devastation. No one should die alone, he replied. Especially not to them. She tilted her head. Why? The Ravagers didn't even invade your territory. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, because the last time they did, they took a child colony on our fringe. Just one. Pop 600. Unarmed. His voice dropped to a whisper. We sent 5 warships. Hunted that swarm for 10 years. We don't leave monsters like this alive. She swallowed. But this world wasn't even human. He nodded once. Didn't matter. She stared at the human vessel in the sky, still dark, still deadly. What happens now? He turned to her. You rebuild. We leave. If they come back, call us again. And you'll answer? This time he didn't speak. He simply touched the small emblem etched into his gauntlet. It read, Humanity, we remember. Then he turned, walked into his ship, and disappeared into the void. Epilogue. The Revenant never docked at a port. It was never seen on any official registry. But across the fringes of the galaxy, stories spread. Stories of the dark ship that came screaming from the stars. Of humans who carried grudges like swords. Of vengeance, mercy, and an ancient promise made not in politics, but in pain. No Ravager swarm ever approached a human-aligned sector again. And on worlds like Kirill 3, small memorials were built. Not just to the fallen, but to the shadow that had come from the void and reminded the galaxy. Humanity may not always come early, but when they do, they bring the storm.